The small-town massacre that no one saw coming. The Napier family tragedy. The child on the yellow line. Laurel, Indiana is the sort of place that keeps its own time. 2 gas pumps, a handful of streets, and neighbors who still slow their trucks to wave. On Sunday, September 25th, 2011, that quiet rhythm broke when a driver rolling past Stips Hill Cemetery spotted a little girl walking the center line of the road, barefoot, dusty, 4 years old. When a voice asked where her family was, she answered the way only a child could. They're sleeping. Deputies followed small footprints and the direction of that answer to a trailer tucked off a gravel turn. It was the Napier place, the kind of home everyone in Laurel knew without needing an address. The door sat crooked on its hinge. Inside, drawers were yanked open, a coffee cup gone cold, a day interrupted and never resumed. One glance was enough for officers to step back, call state investigators, and set a perimeter that pushed the town's curiosity to the ditches. Laurel knew the Napiers. Roy worked when his back allowed. Angie, his estranged wife, still dropped by. Their grown kids, Josh, Melissa, and Jacob, moved through like planets around a steady sun. Money was thin, but the family's habit of helping others, rides, jumper cables, a borrowed ladder, was the kind of generosity small towns run on. Lately, though, the edges had frayed. Arguments, a courthouse visit, paperwork that said a line had been crossed and needed drawing. By mid-afternoon, the girl's great-grandmother, Shirley, arrived at the checkpoint and folded the child into her arms, answering questions between breaths. She told detectives tension had spiked the week before, that Roy had asked a judge for protection with a name on the form nobody wanted to hear, his own son. Laurel's myth of harmony blinked, and then the officers kept writing. Inside the cordo, investigators moved in slow, careful lines. Photographs, swabs, lists. A single shoe print marked the floor with a familiar skater's tread. Outside, in the clipped yard, a faint line of disturbance led into the grass and ended with a discovery that lifted the count and lowered the town's stomach. Nothing about the scene felt random. Even a cell phone found near the yard looked wrong, too clean in a place that wasn't, its memory stripped to silence. Neighbors added fragments that sounded like rumor until too many of them matched. Quick pops around noon, unfamiliar cars the night before, the quiet talk of pain pills that move like pocket money when backs are bad and wages are worse. None of it proved anything. All of it bent the needle toward motive. Then, near the roadblock, a car stopped and a young man stepped out, asking what had happened. It was Josh. Officers told him the thing for which no words are ever enough. He crumpled. Even so, they did what procedure requires, noted his statement, bagged his DC skate shoes, and checked his timeline. In Laurel, grief and suspicion travel the same roads. As evening slid over the cornfields, the little girl finally slept in the back of a cruiser, safe for the first time that day. The perimeter lights blinked against tall pines, and the town's whispers softened to a hum. Before sunrise, a new name would surface, one everyone already knew for all the wrong reasons. And with it, a path out of family turmoil towards something colder, a transaction turned into tragedy. And the question that would follow every answer: how did a child find the center line and keep walking? The name everyone already knew. Morning slid over Laurel in a thin gray band, and investigators started their slow circuit of porches and kitchen tables. Josh's timeline was the first to test. A night at his girlfriend Sandra's, a morning of errands, then the roadblock. His DC skate shoes sat in a paper bag with an evidence sticker. The coroner's early note said what the scene already implied. This was fast, chaotic, and over in minutes. One detail wouldn't quit. The phone found outside, too clean for a place that wasn't. Wiped, SIM missing. Inside, empty prescription bottles suggested what Laurel already whispered about itself. In towns where hard labor wears out backs, pain pills become a quiet currency. It wasn't proof, but it nudged detectives off the narrow trail of family tension and toward a colder motive, a deal that soured. Then came a digital breadcrumb. Melissa's missing phone pinged a tower hours after the killings, near a property everyone called Blondie's. Blondie was Barina Richardson, and the man who came and went from her place carried a reputation like a storm cloud. David Eisen. His file read like a downhill run: felonies, a pharmacy robbery, and a habit that burned through money faster than work could make it. Detectives put a quiet perimeter around Blondie's property. No lights, no knocking, just patience, radios, and the kind of stillness country roads are good at keeping. Around 6 in the evening, a sedan nosed out of the drive. 2 figures inside, unmarked units tucked in behind, followed to a gas station canopy and closed the distance. Hands where we can see them. Engine off, doors open. The passenger wore a disguise that felt almost theatrical. Wig, beard, glasses, a hat tugged low, but posture is hard to fake. In the car they found 2 loaded firearms, clothing that didn't match the calm face wearing it, a phone that should have been Melisse's, A's, and a pair of skate shoes with a tread detectives already knew by heart. The driver gave her name as Amanda, same last name as the victims by coincidence only, and her hands trembled on the steering wheel. Apart from him, in a quiet room with a styrofoam cup of water and a box of tissues no one wants to need, Amanda's account found shape. There had been a planned buy. The count dropped. The price rose. Words sharpened. She said she waited outside, watching the tree line, and when he came back, he was clipped, urgent, telling her to drive, now. "They're all gone," he said. She believed him because of his eyes. Forensics pulled threads tight, tower hits mapping movements, shoe impressions stepping through the story, residue on fabric, and ballistics that lined up with what had been recovered later. When asked to account for the day, Isan moved from denial to silence behind a lawyer's name. Laurel exhaled, but only part way. Arrests and evidence don't reverse a day's damage, yet the case had pivoted, away from the fear of a family implosion and toward the blunt edge of addiction and desperation. In charging documents, the narrative read plainly: a transaction, a confrontation, and a cascade of choices no one could take back. One question refused to settle: how did a 4-year-old make it from a storm inside that trailer to the safety of a yellow line on a country road? Detectives suspected the answer was written in a neighbor's final act, the kind of courage small towns remember long after the sirens fade. The last witness. By the time David Ison's name hit the news, Laurel, Indiana had already changed. The front doors that never used to lock now stayed bolted. The porch lights stayed on past midnight. Every grocery store conversation circled the same question: how could one man destroy 5 lives in minutes and leave a child behind to tell the story? The evidence was a lattice that fit too perfectly. The blood on Eisen's clothes matched the Napier's. Melissa's phone was found in his pocket, wiped clean just like Angie's. His DC skate shoes lined up with the prints in the trailer. The .38 handgun recovered from his car matched the shell casings found at the scene. Forensic threads formed a single, unbreakable rope. Amanda, the woman who had been with him, filled in the gaps with trembling words. She said the plan had been to buy 50 pain pills from Roy Napier. When Roy offered only 30 and raised the price, Isan's temper snapped. The argument turned to shouting, then to violence. She stayed in the car, frozen. When he returned, he was shaking, covered in blood, muttering that, "They're all gone." She said he told her to drive, and she did, afraid for her life and her children. Investigators pieced together the last minutes inside the Napier trailer. Roy and Angie were the first to fall. Jacob and Melissa tried to fight back. Henry Smith, the neighbor who heard the gunfire, rushed in and grabbed little Sierra, trying to get her out. He made it only a few steps into the yard before Ison turned the gun on him. Henry's final act of courage gave Sierra the seconds she needed to run barefoot toward the road, toward life. When the trial came, the courtroom couldn't hold the silence that followed the word guilty. Ison avoided the death penalty by accepting a deal: 5 consecutive life sentences without parole. Justice on paper, but not in the hearts of those left behind. At sentencing, the judge asked if he had anything to say. Ison looked up, expression cold, and said, "I'm sorry, but unless you've been on dope like I was, you don't know how it is." Murmurs rippled through the room, disbelief replacing the air. Then he smirked and added, "I did Sierra a favor." The room erupted. Family members shouted, some wept, others lunged forward before deputies intervened. Outside, Josh Napier, the last surviving son, told reporters, "He gets to live, but my family doesn't. That's not justice." Amanda was later sentenced to 20 years for her role as the getaway driver. Blondie Richardson, Ison's mother, was convicted for buying him the gun he was never legally allowed to own. Each plea, each sentence, each name became a stitch in the same tragic fabric. Today, the trailer is gone, the ground grassed over, but no one in Laurel drives past Stips Hill Road without slowing down. They still talk about Henry Smith's bravery, about the little girl who made it to the road, and about how quickly a man's addiction turned into a massacre. Sierra Napier grew up far from that town, with new guardians and a new life. She doesn't remember the sound of that afternoon, only the way the sun felt on her face when she reached the yellow line. The Laurel Massacre remains one of Indiana's darkest crimes, not because of its scale, but because of what it revealed, that the real horror sometimes isn't hidden in the woods, but inside the walls of a home you thought was safe. If you thought this story was tragic, the next one will leave you speechless. Subscribe, like, and turn on notifications, because what comes next will test everything you believe about good, evil, and the thin line in between.